There's not a lot of historians working on Soviet mixology and cocktails. So, Привіт, добро пожаловать на hot drink. Сегодня я собираюсь приготовить советский коктейль. Так что, Bayelova? For those of you who don't speak Russian, unlike me, welcome to How to Drink. Today I'm gonna make Soviet cocktails, so let's go. Oh my God, that was hard. All right, so I had this idea for a singular episode called Cold War Cocktails, and I started doing all my research on it, and I was like, we gotta have cocktails from the West, we gotta have cocktails from the Soviet Union. I started researching the Soviet Union, and I found out some pretty interesting stuff in here, and maybe this should actually be a two-parter. So this is part one now of a two-parter on the cocktails of the Cold War. Today we're talking about Soviet cocktails. So in researching this episode, I found recipes from 1965 that were served in the Soviet Union, and I'm gonna have them for the first time today, which is very exciting to me because these recipes are weird and don't look like anything I've ever had. I had to get a couple of different bottles, and I have one, maybe two substitutions that I had to make. But that's also exciting too because there's a couple of spirits over here I've never had. Very awesome stuff. I want to get into these drinks. Before I do, in an episode like this, I feel like we should talk a little bit of history, particularly the history of mixology in the Soviet Union. I know it's like a Western stereotype of the Soviet Union and drinking, but it might surprise you to know that actually cocktail culture in the Soviet Union was super duper limited. That makes sense because cocktails are principally an American invention that made their way into Europe and then would have had to make their way further into the Soviet Union. And since they're an American invention, they would have been associated with Western decadence in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had a couple of various flirtations with prohibition. Early on, through Lenin's tenure, alcohol was outlawed. Stalin came in and said, we need revenue, let's sell alcohol. And so he fired up the old vodka distilleries and got back to work on making the vodka. Prior to that, actually, under the Tsar had a monopoly on vodka, and I think that's part of why they outlawed it, because it was like Tsarist, it was decadent, it was Western, it was all of the things that the Soviet Union was supposedly rebelling against. Stalin said, hey, a monopoly on vodka, that sounds like a pretty good idea. I think I'm gonna give that a try. And I guess it sort of worked out for them. There may have been another bout of prohibition there in the middle at some point, I forget, but I do know that I think Gorbachev? Was it Gorbachev or Yeltsin? I think it was Gorbachev. Did like a halfway prohibition where like there were specific hours and regulations about how much you could drink and when you could drink. And it was to combat, I think, a really serious problem that the country seemed to have with alcoholism. I don't think it was very successful, by the way. Just an outsider's observation. I wouldn't know. And, you know, pulling all this, there's not a lot of historians working on Soviet mixology and cocktails. So information is a little bit sparse, let's put it that way. I found like a couple of trustworthy looking websites, actually, and also publications from the Soviet Union that I ran through a translator. That helped a lot. That's actually where the bulk of this is coming from. So, as far as I could tell, up until 1965, one bar in the Soviet Union, it was called Cocktail Hall. It was a ridiculously opulent place. It was open only to the intelligentsia in Moscow. It was primarily used by Stalin as a means of keeping tabs on the intelligentsia and making sure that they didn't have too many Western tendencies and then following them home and dealing with them. Ugh. I guess as long as you weren't a Western agitator or dissident, it was a relatively safe place to drink. You were being surveilled everywhere else anyway, so what's the difference? Although it was very, very expensive. And like, from what I've read, literally only open to the intelligentsia. Like, you had to be a certain class of people to go there. I've also read accounts that they played Western music in there, and that from reading about it, almost like an America-themed bar, but like, maybe it was like tongue-in-cheek, I don't know. Again, it's hard to get this information, so, you know, I'm like 5-10 steps down the chain. Half of what I'm reading could be legend. So all of these recipes that I'm gonna do come from a publication that was written by Alexander Georgievich Kudrayevstev, regarded as the first barman of the Soviet Union. Apparently he was obsessed with Hemingway's descriptions of a daiquiri and thought it must be like a gift from God. Of course, they still restricted all the decadent Western cocktails from the population, except for at Cocktail Hall. So Kudrayevstev had to wait a really long time for his chance to tend bar. In 1960, he was able to get into a training course to become a waiter. And in 1965, very lucky for him, the Soviet Union opened their first foreigner bars at a few hotels. The Metropole Hotel in Moscow, the Berlin Hotel, also in Moscow, and the Europe Hotel in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. And so as a result of them opening those bars, he finally got to pursue his dream of becoming a bartender. Of course, he did need to be able to speak 3 languages to be considered for the job, and he had to be thoroughly vetted by the KGB, but I guess he passed muster. They also couldn't call him a bartender at first because I guess that's how it worked, but like bartender wasn't in the list of official jobs that existed in the Soviet Union. They had to call him a buffet man. That was a real job. And he was able to petition the government and add bartender sometimes later, and they did, and that's why he's the first bartender of the Soviet Union, because he was, which I think is insane. I read some descriptions of these international bars. They were slang called currencies, which I think is really interesting. So apparently it was illegal for citizens of the Soviet Union to hold or own or possess, whatever term you want to use, foreign currency. You could only have your rubles, and the foreign bars only accepted foreign currency. So there was really no way for a citizen of Russia, a citizen of the Soviet Union, to be in one of those bars without really breaking the law. There was, of course, an exception made for the ladies of the night, whom the KGB allowed to ply their trade in there in exchange for information about their clients. So apparently that was like a thing. I don't know if it was, I was reading an account from Kuryestev or from somebody else, but like there was always a party man or KGB man in the bar kind of watching the door. And whenever somebody left, the bartender would give him a good wink and let him know maybe you want to follow that guy. So I mean, these bars existed to spy on the foreigners who were visiting them. Another thing that's really interesting to me is in true Soviet fashion, Kuryestev had this idea about codifying mixological ingredients and recipes into algebraic formulas, which is, believe it or not, despite my being very mathematically disinclined, a thing I've thought a lot about and something I've considered as like I would love to do with the HTD app, which you can get at htdapp.com. By being a member of my Patreon, it'll help you use the show as your own personal cocktail guide. But yeah, I've thought a little bit about like turning drinks into formulas to help you come up with original cocktails. And that was exactly what he did. He had these formulas so that bartenders could invent drinks on the spot by using this system. It apparently was an expansive and insane system that had to like quantify every single spirit into like a set of values, and then every single cocktail into an equation for those values. But it's kind of crazy. I didn't know that somebody else had already kind of done that. I think he wrote a book on it called 22nd Century Cocktails or something. Very interesting stuff, actually, that I can't read because I don't speak Russian, despite my ham-fisted efforts at the opening of this episode. So I found 4 of his drinks. I want to do them right now. These are Soviet cocktails that I've never had. I've never really seen anything like these. Very excited about it. Let's do it. Soviet cocktails. First drink is called a Mayak, which I guess, or Mayak? I don't know how to pronounce that. Mayak, I think. Apparently translates to lighthouse. It looks a lot like a kind of a prairie oyster. I'm gonna build this in the glass, and I need an egg yolk for this. I'm gonna discard my egg white into this. That's the way I like to do that. So we gotta get rid of our egg white and drop our yolk in there. Oh, good, it didn't even break. Always afraid of that. I had already committed to dropping it straight in there when I knew I should have slid it down the side. And then it's really simple. It's equal parts Chartreuse and Cognac, specifically 20 mils of each. All of these, as far as I can tell, are written in milliliters, and it doesn't call for ice, as far as I can tell. And I can make that assumption because a lot of these do specifically call for ice. So here we go. I feel like that's about 20 mils of Chartreuse. I'm going to use some very decadent Western cognac here, my Pierre Ferrand. It's occurring to me that since there's no way to enjoy to sample this drink without shooting it, I am apparently in proper Soviet fashion going to get fucked up right now throughout the course of this episode. I hope the rest are not shooters. I had them translated, I wrote them down, and I really haven't looked at them since other than to make a list of the ingredients and bring them here. So I actually don't entirely know what I'm in store for. I was a little bit surprised to realize that this is a prairie oyster the minute I built it. Chartreuse and cognac in a prairie oyster. I mean, like, yeah, I think it's got to be done like that. I don't think that you would break that up. I can't imagine just like mixing yolk and spirits into a paste or whatever. That seems gross. And I don't have a process for these. And some of the ingredients coming up in a minute are like a little bit different, and I'm doing my best with those, you know. Either hard to get, impossible to get, or I needed to find analogs. News and nas. Woo! That's intense. Ha! Soviet Russia cocktail drink you. Holy shit. That'll put some hair on your chest and make you cry. Okay, it's really sweet. It is strongly herbal. Maybe there's like a weird note of chocolate coming out, and like it's savory as well. Like there's rosemary in there a little bit. There's a lot going on in that drink. Very intense. A real eye-opener. It feels provincial, you know, like a prairie oyster. It feels like something rugged. You know, you make it without ice. You know, it's breakfast. It's got some protein. It's got some calories. Wake your ass up. Let's go to work. Kind of a vibe. And lingering flavor. Very strong lingering flavor. I'll tell you what though, I can imagine this going nice with dinner. Like as a aperitif, you know? Now I want to eat. There's like cherry notes in there as well. The interplay between that cognac and my green chartreuse, and that's the best I can come up with for this, is producing faint notes of chocolate, faint notes of cherry, lots and lots of rosemary, maybe thyme. Actually, usually I pick up on a lot of black pepper in the chartreuse. I'm not really getting that today. Wintergreen. I think wintergreen, I would say. All right, I mean, let's move it along. So this drink is called Druzhesky, which I guess means friendly or friendship or friends or something like that. When I read the initial translation, it said juniper bitters, which is funny. So I made some with some juniper extract that I had made and Angostura bitters. And let me tell you what, these are very powerfully juniper bitters. They are good. I didn't see any reason to start from scratch. I figured just take a base of Angostura and add juniper to it. However, I am now seeing that this recipe calls for 60 milliliters of juniper bitters. I think that it's just gin, and that's like sort of one of those like direct literal translations or something like that that's not, you know, accurate. Maybe what I'll do is a little bit of both. Like I'll take my gin and my juniper bitters and mix them together, kind of juniper them up a touch. I'm not really sure. This drink does have ice and lemon juice, so it must be shaken. Let's slice into my lemon, and I want 30 mils of lemon juice, otherwise known as 1 ounce. So this is a thing that comes up a couple times, is canned fruits. And I really don't know what that means. That might have meant bits of pineapple in syrup. It might have meant whatever. And I looked into it a little bit. It's maybe just as likely that it meant some maraschino cherries, like actual maraschino cherries, since those probably would have been behind the bar. So I'm gonna throw one into my shaker. I'm not really sure what else to do with that information. And it's just one of those things where I gotta make a best guess. There was a description of drinking like wine mixed with fruit or something at the cocktail hall. It kind of lends me to believe that they would do that. They would just put fruits and stuff right into the drink and shake it up and stuff like that. I want 20 mils of sugar syrup. A metric shaker would be handy here because like when you're just talking about 20 and 30 mils, like that gets a little complicated. That's probably about 20, especially if I leave a little bit back in there. There we go. Okay, so Cornel is the one liquor that I've never seen before listed in here that I could not get my hands on. I just couldn't. Drink.curiata.com was super duper helpful. Cornel was really tough to come by. You can still get it, it still exists. From what I understand, it's a bitter, mildly bitter cherry liqueur. I found this, Liqueur de Ginja, and this is lightly bitter cherry liqueur. Never had it before, but I think it'll do it. It's like tart and slightly bitter. Yeah, nothing like hearing, also not quite like maraschino. I actually love it. It's really tasty. I love this stuff now. 15 mils of this, so half an ounce. I want black currant liqueur. That would be like creme de cassis, as far as I know. It's a liqueur, so it's gotta be sweet. Can't be like a eau de vie, like a black currant eau de vie or something like that. And creme de cassis has been around forever. I could see it coming up. 40 mils is gonna be a touch more than an ounce. It's kind of a lot, in my opinion. But, you know, if we use bittered up gin with this, that might make some sense. You got a lot of flavor in here. So, and then that's 60 mils of our juniper bitters, for which I'm gonna use some London Dry gin and a couple dashes of these juniper bitters that I made. It's possible that juniper bitters is like gin, but more bitter, and it's like something that they had in Russia that you can't get here. I'm not really sure what else to do with that information. I will now do my ice. What I think is interesting too is that all of his recipes give total volumes, which I guess would tell you what to serve it in. It calls for ice. It definitely looks like a drink that should be shaken. Should it be served on the rocks? It's a good question. It might have been. I'm not sure that I will. We'll see. Ultimately, for tasting purposes, it won't make a ton of difference. Get your ice into here. His also calls for like ice by milliliters. So it actually says 30 mils of ice, but that's, what the hell is 30 mils of ice? Like, that's insane. I don't know what, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things too as well, like, where it's like, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with that information. It's pretty color. Chilled glass. I'm gonna strain it for now and we'll see what our wash line is. And then maybe I'll add some ice to it. I take that back. It's not a very pretty color at all. And you know what? Based on that, I bet it's supposed to be ice dumped. That's what I think. I think you just do that. You know, it's funny. I didn't know what this was gonna look like until I made it. And I look at it and I think that needs a straw and actually some mint. I don't know that it would have been served with mint. It doesn't call for mint, but like, I want to put mint in that, you know? Hello, lovers. Been sleeping well? Fully rested or wishing you weren't? Well, we're all in luck because this episode is sponsored by Helix Sleep and they want to get us all into bed. Helix makes premium mattresses matched to your needs, shipped directly to your door. And they didn't ask me to tell you this. In fact, they emphatically asked me not to. But they also happen to be the best mattress on the market for getting it on. Now you might be asking yourself, match to my needs? How could they possibly match a mattress to my needs? How can they even know my needs, my wants, my most intimate of desires? Well, like all good lovers, they invite you to answer questions about yourself. They're deeply interested in what makes you tick in bed and how you like it. Helix wants to know you deeply. And they have a little questionnaire to make it happen. You should take that quiz with your partner, have a glass of champagne or cognac over it, and then you and your lover and Helix can all get it on together. According to Helix, I'm a hybrid sleeper, a little on my back, a little on my side, up and down, down and up, sideways, and everything else in between the sheets. So they paired me up with a mattress that they called the Midnight Lux. And let me tell you, I've seen a number of very luxe midnights on it. But what if we hadn't had that spark of chemistry? What if it just hadn't clicked for us? Well, Helix has a 100-night risk-free sleep trial. I could have sent my mattress back any time in that 100 nights, no questions asked. Personally, I find the prospect of leaving my sumptuous den of iniquity to be like a cold shower. So it's huge for me that Helix ships the mattress directly to my front door. It'll arrive tightly wrapped in its bondage, bound in a box, and when you release it, the mattress will swell with sweet air until it's supple and pliable. That's how you'll know it's ready for you to enter it. Thank you so much to Helix Sleep for sponsoring this episode. Helix is offering How to Drink viewers an exclusive partner offer for President's Day. Visit helixsleep.com/howtodrink to get 27% off your mattress. Helix Sleep, the mattress for fucking. And I think that that's actually pretty nice. So this is a Druzhesky, which apparently means friend or friendly. Very sweet. It's very, very sweet. Oh my God. Oh, that is sweet. It's not untasty, kind of a cordial. I sort of want to throw some more lemon in it. I think with some more lemon, it'll be balanced out. A lot of cherry. The black currant is like hugely powerful in here. Really big and powerful. 40 mils of that seems crazy in retrospect. I think I would do 15. I would do it in equal parts with the Cornel. Maybe we should do that. Maybe I should like taste these and then kind of rework them. Oh my God, that's sweet. Medicinal sweet. Cough syrup sweet. It's just too much. Still not bad. I mean, like, you could lengthen the hell out of this with some club soda. I don't actually have my soda set up right now. Put that in a pitcher of soda on the table for everybody to enjoy. It's pretty with the mint. I like the way the green offsets the drink. I'm gonna flash cut to a version of it the way that I think it should be made, and then I'll give you the recipe that I used. So here's what I did. I did an ounce of lemon juice. I did a half an ounce of the black currant, a half an ounce of the Cornel. Actually bumped that up a little bit more because it's not a very powerful flavor against the black currant liqueur. I did 2 ounces of gin with like 4 dashes of my juniper bitters, and that was it. I pared it way down. Let's just dump that into my glass. I like the mint. Let's do that. A little mint, wilty mint. Okay, whatever. Let's steal the mint from the good drink. That was a nice piece of mint. And a straw. Maybe this is my version of it. Yeah, I took out all of the simple. And maybe now it's a little undersweet. Maybe you want it to be, yeah, but you're actually gonna taste things now. do a half an ounce of simple. So there's a lot of variables here, right? Like, I don't know what blackcurrant liquor he was using. I don't know how sweet or not sweet Cornel is. Cornel might be very not sweet by comparison to the Liqueur de Ginja. Those two things alone would have a huge factor on our flavor. And I don't know what ratio he used for sugar syrup. I just don't have that information. So more of a guide, really. Now that's tasty. That's pretty well balanced. It has cherry notes. It has whatever the hell blackcurrant notes are in it. The gin isn't buried, but also isn't screaming in your face. And it actually finishes on this really nice juniper bitters note, which is pretty cool. I made that on a live stream. If you want a link to the live stream, I'll move it down there and up here in the corner, but you know, it's long. That's the way I like that drink. That's the Friendly, updated for Western palates in the year 2025. No, that's lovely. I like that very much. That's an extremely tasty drink now. And this lemon is really brightening it all up. That's cool. That's fun. Isn't that neat? I like that. Let's move along. All right, so this next drink is called Okhotnichy, which, Okhotnichy? Oh my God, this is hard, man. My mouth can't wrap itself around this. Okhotnichy, which I guess translates to the hunter or a hunter's drink or something like that. And as far as I can tell, it calls for something called Okhotnichy bitters, which I think is going to be like either Jägermeister or Becherovka. Becherovka is from the Czech Republic. It's a little further to the east than Germany, where Jaeger comes from. Maybe it's a little bit more appropriate. We'll use it. It's not that far away from Jaeger. A little less sweet, more allspice for sure. I think I bought it because people said it's like one of the worst liquors. Like, I think it's pretty good. Okay, so 20 mils of our Becherovka, just shy of an ounce. 20 mils of Starka. This was not easy for me to find locally. In fact, I could not find this locally. I got this from Curiata. You can pick up a bottle at drink.curiata.com. In fact, they have the entire How to Drink collections down there. Hit the link below and up here in the corner. They're a friend of the show. Frankly, I don't talk about them enough. I'm a terrible partner. I'm sorry. Yeah, they can ship your spirits directly to your front door in most of America. Not a communist. Here we go, 20 mils of Starka. Oh, what is Starka? It's some kind of an aged vodka, as far as I know. It says it's Starka Original Bitters, which I think is interesting because I'm pretty sure this is Russian and it's not bitters in the Western sense. It's not Angostura. So I wonder if bitters is a much broader term over there. Yeah, overseas trading, product of Lithuania. Sorry, not Russia. And I'm certain Lithuanians do not want to be compared to Russia. But I think that Lithuania was part of the Soviet Union at one time. Either Starka is available in the Soviet Union as well, or in Russia as like a thing that they make, or because Lithuania was in there. You know. Get it at Curiata. Okay, this one was tricky. I had to come up with a suitable alternative. Yellow liquor Yuzhny. Now, Yuzhny, I don't know what that means. I know it's yellow liquor. Frankly, I asked ChatGPT. ChatGPT thought it was probably like Curacao or like another orange liqueur like Cointreau or something like that. The thing of it is that Yuzhny, I don't know what that means, but by chance, when I was at the liquor store, there's a special dry Curacao from Pierre Ferrand out right now that has yuzu in it. And it occurs to me, yuzu comes from China, Russia is right over there. Maybe it was a yuzu thing. And I bought it, so I figured, why not? Let's try that. 15 mils of yellow liquor Yuzhny. We're doing our best, guys. Doing our best. We want some canned fruits, non-specific. I have a feeling it meant whatever the bartender had, if it's that not specific. And since what I have is cherries, I can't be wrong. Okay, now we need ice. Interesting drink. No citrus. Unless canned fruits somehow implies citrus. I might be able to simulate like canned fruits by throwing a splash of pineapple in there. Let's try it and then I'll think about doing so. Whatever canned fruits is, it only calls for 5 mils of it, so it can't be that important. Chilled glass. I mean, no garnish is called for. I want to do an orange twist on this. Let me try a sip and see if it wants that orange twist. That's so neat. I really like this drink. That is awesome. No, really no notes. I'm not remaking this one. That's really cool. It has a very vegetal, earthy, herbal flavoring. It's not overpowering. The Curacao is adding just kind of the right amount of sweetness and, well, frankly, citrus notes that I think would have been really missing. It has a bitters kind of note. It has a lot of gentian in this. That's where the earthiness is coming from. I'll bet that either Starka or Becherovka, or both of them, have some gentian in them as a component. for sure. I really like this drink. This is a cool drink. The Hunter, or for the hunters, or the hunt, or something like that. Okhotnichy. I shouldn't have put that yeah on the end of it. It's hard not to. That's really tasty. It's very refreshing. It is not cloyingly sweet without being unbalanced. It's very herbal, very savory, very, very nice. Cool drink. Awesome. Yeah, we're having fun now. We're experiencing other countries. This is a very Epcot-y episode. You know, there was no Russia pavilion at Epcot. There maybe should have been. I'm just saying, didn't happen. You know, a real representation of the Soviet Union at that time might have been good for people. Oh no, we're up to our final drink already. Wow. This is the Moscow Special. Calls for, again, our juniper bitters, our yellow liquor Yuzhny. This calls for a cherry liqueur, and I'm thinking it's Hearing or Maraschino, but I don't know which. Aromatic, 5 mils. It's got to be Angostura or something like it. Insanely, it calls for 5 mils of lemon juice. What the fuck? 5 mils of canned fruits. We don't know what that means. And ice. Well, I'm choosing to interpret that as a kind of a sweet, shaken martini, right? Because they're all pretty small volumes. Like, it's not going to be a long drink. There's no club soda or anything like that in there. All right, let's do the Moscow Special. So we need 5 mils of lemon juice. I mean, it's gonna be tough to measure that, you know? I'm gonna do like, there you go. Yeah, a quarter ounce is basically 7 mils. A couple dashes of Angostura. We want canned fruits. I wonder if it was just like canned fruits. Oh, very decadent. That is the height of luxury. We're gonna do 1 cherry and a couple of drops of the syrup that goes with it. Look at the big spender over here with his canned fruits. Cherry Hearing or Maraschino? Interesting question. Ooh. If I don't like the way this comes out, I might try it the other way, but we're gonna do it Maraschino. It looks like it's 10 mils, slightly less than half an ounce. Yellow liquor Yuzhny, again, 10 mils. And juniper bitters, 25 milliliters. Jesus. I think that actually is gonna kill this bottle exactly. Sure did. And since we've established this as a fact, we will also use some of my juniper bitters that I made. Makes me wish I didn't add the Ango. Well, I mean, technically there's lemon juice and there's canned fruits in there. Let's shake it. Yeah, I like the idea of putting it into this little guy. Looks pretty neat. I like that. Here it is, the Moscow Special. Should I garnish it with something? Let's see. It's quite good. Another one that's very herbal, very gentian, very borderline savory. It could actually be a little sweeter, but let's leave it in its drier state first. It has a lot of bitter notes. The cherry does cut through. I actually do like that quite a bit. It's an astringent drink. It's mildly astringent, maybe moderately astringent. It's not highly astringent. It's not a Trinidad sour. It's not like a giant pour of Ango, but it is Ango forward. I would say that the way I made it today. That said, you're still getting a touch of tartness, cherry notes that are not terribly overpowering. The orange notes, the yuzu notes, they're present. And of course there is gin in it, but like, I think that the gin is a little bit lost. The gin is probably just booze. It's just booze. It's interesting, only one of these ended up, did any of these call for vodka? The Starka was as close as it got. I wonder if vodka was not for mixing. Like vodka was for vodka. I like it. I like it a lot. I wouldn't go with maraschino. If anything, I would increase your hearing. No way, man. That's a cool drink. It's something you would spend some time with. Probably want to be in a tiny stemware, like a Nick and Nora, because you don't want your hand touching it to warm it up, but you're not going to drink it fast. You're going to have it in small sips. Well, you know, you are probably a member of the intelligentsia, and you probably have political theories and books and maybe even decadent jazz to discuss with your fellow members of the intelligentsia class. So, you know, you're gonna need this drink to be a good prop in your hand so that you look thoroughly Western fluent, if you will, decadent. Dare I say down to fuck. You're gonna flounce about with it, you know? And it's a good drink for that too. Garnish-wise, yeah, cherries. I think put a couple cherries on a pick over there. That's mwah. I gotta say, it's not unlike a very bitter version of a Manhattan, now that I've had a couple sips of it. Yeah, a weirdly apt comparison. Of these, I think the Hunter might be my favorite. That's very fascinating. I like that. This is the easiest to drink. This is almost like a Soviet tiki drink. Oh man, that creme de cassis is really potent. I do wonder if theirs would be different. I think if I did it a third time, I would go for even less of it. I might even omit it. I mean, like, if I'm truly doing like my own interpretation on that drink, I might omit it entirely and go primarily with the Ginza, Liqueur de Ginza, and then maybe even a dash of Ango in there to kind of like hoots that Ginza in the butt. Give it a little bit more of it, well, supposedly bitter. Give it a little bit more bitterness. In fact, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it is a tradition on How to Drink that I add Angostura to a drink that did not originally call for it. Therefore, this is the one of today. Let's just mix that in. A little bartender's ketchup. I'm not the only one who does that, I want to point out. That's why they call it bartender's ketchup. People tend to put it in everything. Believe it or not, that does help. That helps a lot. That adds a little bit more character. It somehow tempers the sweetness of the drink. That helps it a fair bit. Well, this has been Cocktails of the Soviet Union. I found 4 actual Soviet cocktails. I don't know if they're 100% accurate, but I think they're probably pretty close. There are not like things I've had otherwise. So even if I'm not bang on, we've definitely made some drinks here that are different, that you're not gonna find elsewhere. And they were all pretty cool, actually. They were all pretty good. I didn't really love the Prairie Oyster. I think I would do the Prairie Oyster a little differently. Well, the problem with that is I like a Prairie Oyster with Worcestershire sauce in it and all of that. So I'm comparing it to another drink that I already like. It was cool in its own right. It's just that I prefer a Prairie Oyster. Maybe a splash of gin, an egg yolk, some Worcestershire sauce, and a twist of fresh pepper. I actually like that a lot. I don't drink them on the regular basis, but when I've had them for the show, I've enjoyed them. These are really fun drinks that are kind of like in a different direction than a Western palate would take cocktails, to be honest. I think that's cool. I like this idea. I like the idea of finding cocktails from other cultures and exploring them on the show. The problem is, there are actually not a lot of cocktails from other cultures. In some ways, the Soviet Union presents a unique scenario because there was both the Iron Curtain preventing the importation of Western spirits, Western recipes, Western books, Western culinary cocktail things, but also a yearning for that, at least amongst a certain portion of the population. So you ended up with what I think are like, I guess that's how cocktails work, you know, like people trying to well, I read about a cocktail in this book that I'm not supposed to have. Maybe this is what that is. Like the layers of abstraction that they had to work within yielded new ideas or different ideas. And I think that's really cool. There's not a lot of that, as far as I've researched, elsewhere in mixology, because the US was really good at exporting mixology around the world. A big factor there was Prohibition. Once Prohibition kicked in, a lot of people associate Prohibition mistakenly with the origin of cocktails. Cocktails come from the 1800s. They don't come from Prohibition. Prohibition almost successfully destroyed cocktail culture in America. And the best bartenders in America, they left America so that they could continue to make a living. The cocktails that were available in America during Prohibition were by and large not great. The best cocktails were being served in France and the UK and in Cuba. And in fact, Americans would take trips to those places for that purpose. Americans of means. As a result of that, we exported our cocktail culture to a lot of places that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise. And so everywhere you went in the world was American cocktails, except for in the Soviet Union, which was kind of this weird walled garden. And I'm just realizing that now. This is kind of a neat thing. It's like virgin territory. I want to get the rest of this guy's writings and play with all of his drinks. This is cool. They had different instincts. They had different desires. But at the same time, they learned about, that is fucking cool. They learned about drinks from stuff that filtered in from the West. I don't know. That's a golden age of cinema moment in a weird way, where censorship leads to creativity. Oh man, we may have found something here. Anyway, this was part 1 of Cold War cocktails. I'm doing part 2 right away. We're gonna do cocktails of the Western powers, put them together, enjoy. There'll be links all around once that other episode comes out. Hey guys, thank you all so much for enjoying this episode, and I will see you soon in another edition of HTD. Which one do I want to drink? I'm gonna close on this. Das Vidanya!